Jack Forrester built his life from the ground up, literally. At 47, he runs a booming bike repair chain in Denver, respected by peers but quietly haunted by a chapter he left behind. One sunny afternoon, while visiting a community bike station for underprivileged kids, Jack notices two twin boys expertly fixing a rusted frame. Nothing unusual, until one of them shyly hands him a worn-out wallet and says, "This belonged to my mom. It has your picture in it." Jack opens it, and time stops. A photo from 10 years ago, a woman he once loved, long gone, and two boys with his eyes. What secrets does the past still hold? What kind of future can he now build? Subscribe now for a story about second chances, fatherhood, and a love that rides beyond the years. Jack Forrester had built his empire on wheels, spokes, gears, and the hum of ambition. At 47, he was the undisputed king of Denver's cycling scene, the founder and CEO of Forrester Cycles, a chain of high-end bike shops that dotted the Rockies like polished gemstones. His name was synonymous with innovation, quality, and relentless drive. Yet, for all his success, Jack was a man adrift. His days were filled with meetings, product launches, and expansion plans, but his nights were haunted by the echo of a past he had long buried. He had mastered the art of moving forward, never pausing to glance in the rearview mirror. On a crisp spring morning, Jack found himself at a community event in a modest Denver neighborhood. It was a charity bike repair workshop for underprivileged kids, organized by a local nonprofit. Jack had agreed to sponsor the event, more out of obligation than genuine interest. He arrived in his sleek black SUV, stepping out in a tailored suit that contrasted sharply with the casual attire of the volunteers. As he surveyed the bustling scene, his eyes were drawn to two boys, no older than 10, working diligently on a battered old bike. Their hands moved with surprising skill, tightening bolts and adjusting brakes with the precision of seasoned mechanics. There was something familiar in their synchronized movements, a silent communication that spoke of a deep bond. Curiosity piqued, Jack approached them. One of the boys looked up, his eyes a striking shade of green that sent a jolt through Jack's chest. The boy reached into a worn backpack and pulled out an old, weathered wallet. "Sir," he said hesitantly, "I think this belongs to you. We found it in our mom's things." Jack took the wallet, his hands trembling. It was his, lost a decade ago during a road trip through Colorado. He opened it slowly, revealing a faded photograph tucked inside, a picture of himself and a woman named Amber, taken during a fleeting romance that had ended without closure. The world seemed to tilt as Jack stared at the photo. Memories he had long suppressed came rushing back. Amber's laughter, her fiery spirit, the way she had vanished without a word. And now, these boys, with their familiar eyes and mechanical prowess, stood before him. "Where is your mother?" Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The boys exchanged a glance. "She passed away 2 years ago," the other replied softly. "We live with a friend of hers now." Jack's heart ached with a mix of sorrow and guilt. He had moved on, built a life of success and solitude, never imagining that a part of his past had continued without him. The realization that he might be their father hit him with the force of a freight train. He knelt down, looking into their eyes. "What are your names?" "I'm Max, and this is Leo," the first boy said. Jack nodded, emotions swirling within him. "I'm Jack." The boys smiled, unaware of the storm raging inside the man before them. That night, Jack sat alone in his penthouse, the city lights twinkling below. He held the photograph, tracing the edges with his fingers. The past he had tried to forget had found him, not with accusations or demands, but with innocence and open hearts. He knew he couldn't ignore this revelation. The boys deserved answers, and perhaps so did he. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with emotional landmines and legal complexities, But for the first time in years, Jack felt a sense of purpose that went beyond profit margins and market shares. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years, reaching out to an old friend who might help him navigate this unexpected journey. As the call connected, Jack took a deep breath. The wheels of his life were turning in a new direction, one that would challenge him in ways he had never anticipated. But he was ready to ride. Jack returned to his office the next morning with a restlessness that wouldn't settle. The twin boys from the bike stand haunted his thoughts, not just because of their uncanny mechanical intuition or the way their laughter had stirred something dormant in his chest, but because of that wallet. The wallet had been unmistakably his. Leather worn soft with time, a faded Velcro strip that barely clung shut, and the photo, creased, delicate, but intact, took his breath away. It was of him and Amber, taken during a spontaneous road trip to Santa Fe. She leaned against his shoulder, cheeks flushed with sun, and he remembered thinking back then, this might be it. This might be real. He hadn't seen Amber since that summer ended. She'd left without warning. No letter, no phone call, nothing. And now, more than a decade later, her memory had found its way back into his life in the most unexpected way. He sat down at his desk and stared at the wallet he'd brought home the night before. Slowly, reverently, he opened it again. In the second flap was a small, folded note, the ink smudged but legible. It simply said, "For when he's ready to remember," her handwriting, Amber's. Jack's voice cracked as he murmured her name aloud. Amber? Later that afternoon, he drove across Denver toward the community bulletin board where he'd seen the kids. A handwritten flyer advertising free bike repairs for local kids still fluttered on the cork wall. At the bottom, a number. He dialed. A woman answered. Her voice was thin, cautious. "Hi," Jack began carefully. "I'm calling about the kids who were fixing bikes yesterday. Twin boys?" "Oh, Jaden and Jesse. Yeah, they're mine. Well, I'm taking care of them. Are you there?" "I was Amber's roommate," she said softly, almost as if she was preempting a storm. "She passed 2 years ago. Car accident." Jack gripped the phone tighter. "I knew her. A long time ago." The pause on the line was weighted. "Are you—" Her voice shifted, guarded. "Are you Jack Forrester?" "Yes." There was another pause, then a resigned sigh. "They're her sons, Jack. Born about 8.5 years ago. She never told you?" "She never. I didn't even know she was pregnant." The woman didn't respond right away, but when she did, her tone softened. "I think you should come by." The small apartment complex was tucked between a crumbling hardware store and a laundromat. It wasn't the kind of place Jack usually visited, but he stepped out of his luxury SUV and climbed the narrow stairwell without hesitation. The door opened before he could knock. A thin woman with tired eyes stood there, clutching a laundry basket. She gave him a long, measured look. "You really didn't know, did you?" Jack shook his head slowly, his throat too tight to speak. Inside, the apartment was modest, cluttered with bike tools and coloring books. On the wall hung a single-framed photo of Amber holding 2 bundled newborns. Jack stepped closer to it, heart pounding. "They look like her," he whispered. "Jaden's the quiet one," the woman said, watching him. "Jessie talks a mile a minute. They're smart, kind. Amber did her best, but things were hard after she got sick." "Sick?" Jack turned to her sharply. "Cancer. She fought it for a while, but she never told you. She said you had your life and she didn't want to complicate it." Jack sat down heavily on the worn couch. "I should have been there. I should have—" "She made her choice, Jack. And now you have one too." The front door opened, and 2 pairs of sneakers pattered in. The twins paused when they saw him. "Hey!" Jessie beamed. "It's the guy from the bike place." Jack stood slowly, heart thudding. "Hi." Jaden approached, pulling something from his pocket. "You left this," he said, offering the wallet again, even though Jack already had it. "We didn't take anything. Promise." Jack knelt down to their level. "I know you didn't. Thank you." Jesse squinted. "You look like the guy in Mom's photo." Jaden nodded. "Yeah, the one she used to keep in her drawer." Jack's voice was barely a whisper. "Do you guys know who I am?" The boys looked at each other. "Mom said if we ever met a man named Jack Forrester, we should be kind. She said he was important." Jack's eyes filled as he reached out gently. "I'd really like to get to know you both, if that's okay." Jaden smiled shyly. Jesse beamed. "Okay," they said in unison. And just like that, a door cracked open, one Jack had never known he needed. Jack returned home that evening with more weight on his shoulders than he'd carried in years, and not the kind that came from board meetings or financial forecasts. This was personal. It was bone deep. He stared blankly at his dinner, untouched, while the twins' voices echoed in his memory. "She said you were important." Important. That word struck him in a way nothing from the business world ever had. The next morning, he didn't head to his corporate office. Instead, he drove across town again, this time with a purpose he hadn't felt in a decade. He stopped by a bike shop first, his own, and loaded 2 brand-new bikes into his truck. It wasn't much, but it was a start. When he pulled up to the apartment, the boys were outside, arguing over who could fix the chain on a rusty pink cruiser. Their fingers were stained with grease, their faces set in concentration. Jack stepped out, clearing his throat gently. Both heads turned. Jesse's eyes widened. "You came back," Hick smiled softly. "I said I wanted to get to know you. I meant it." Jaden stood, wiping his hands on his jeans. "We don't usually get visits from grown-ups who say that." "Well, I brought you something." Jack walked to the back of the truck and carefully lifted out the 2 bikes, midnight blue and fire red, polished frames, proper gears, the works. Jesse gasped. "Are those for us?" "If you want them." Jaden approached slowly, reverently running his fingers along the handlebars. "These are amazing." Jack knelt down, meeting their eyes. "I own a chain of bike repair shops. I thought maybe I could teach you a few tricks, if you're interested." "We fix stuff all the time," Jesse said proudly, "but we've never had new ones." Their caretaker, the same woman Jack had met yesterday, stepped outside and crossed her arms, her gaze sharp. "You didn't have to do all this." "I know," Jack replied quietly, "but I want to." She studied him for a long moment. "They've been through enough, Jack. If you're here, don't let it be out of guilt or nostalgia. Be here because you mean to stay." Jack didn't flinch. "That's exactly why I'm here." The boys wasted no time. They hopped on the bikes and zipped down the block, their laughter rising into the warm morning air. Jack stood with his hands in his pockets, watching them with an ache swelling behind his ribs. Pride, sorrow, and something terrifyingly close to hope. Later that afternoon, they invited Jack inside to see their bike corner, a small closet stacked with broken pedals, salvaged reflectors, and carefully labeled jars of screws. Jesse rattled off the function of every part like a seasoned mechanic, while Jaden shyly offered him a seat near their half-built gear system. As the boys demonstrated their latest creation, a rudimentary rear light fashioned from a repurposed flashlight, Jack listened with genuine admiration. He couldn't help but think of Amber. She would have adored this, their cleverness, their kindness, their fierce independence. Jaden suddenly looked up. "Did you love our mom?" The question hit Jack like a punch to the gut. He nodded slowly. "Very much." "Did she love you?" Jesse asked, quieter. "I think she did. We were young. Things got complicated, but I never stopped thinking about her." Jaden was quiet for a long time. Then softly, "She kept your picture." Jack's throat tightened. "I didn't know about you, not until yesterday. But I want to now. I want to learn everything." The boys exchanged a glance. Jesse reached under his mattress and pulled out a shoebox, handing it to Jack. Inside were fragments of Amber's world. Old letters, receipts, a hospital bracelet, and one torn photograph of her holding 2 newborns, eyes tired but glowing. Jack held it like it was made of glass. She was so brave. The woman watching them from the hallway finally stepped in. "Amber left me that box. She told me if anything ever happened to her, and you came around, I should show you." Jack looked up. She really thought I might come? She hoped, she replied quietly. Hope was all she had at the end. Silence settled between them, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the faint chatter of the boys in the next room. "Would you let me spend more time with them?" Jack asked. "Not just visits. I want to be part of their lives, however they'll let me." She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "They're good kids. If you're serious, they deserve someone who stays." "I'm serious," Jack said, his voice firm. "And I'm staying." Jack Forrester's days began to take on a new rhythm. Mornings once filled with back-to-back meetings and investor calls were now replaced with the sound of laughter and the clinking of tools as he spent time with Jaden and Jesse. The boys, with their boundless energy and inquisitive minds, had quickly become the center of his world. One sunny afternoon, Jack decided to take the twins to a local community bike workshop he had recently learned about. The place was bustling with activity. Children and adults alike working on bikes, sharing tools, and exchanging stories. It was a vibrant hub of camaraderie and learning. As they entered, a volunteer greeted them warmly. "Welcome. Looking to fix up a bike or learn some new skills?" Jack smiled, placing a hand on each of the boys' shoulders. "A bit of both, actually. These two are eager learners." The volunteer chuckled. "Well, they've come to the right place." Over the next few hours, Jaden and Jesse immersed themselves in the workshop. They learned how to adjust brakes, true wheels, and even patch up tires. Jack watched with pride as they absorbed each lesson, their faces lighting up with each new discovery. During a break, Jack struck up a conversation with another parent. "Your boys are naturals," the parent remarked. "Thank you," Jack replied, his voice tinged with emotion. "They've taught me more than I could have imagined." As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the workshop, Jack gathered the twins. "Ready to head home?" Jesse nodded enthusiastically. "Can we come back next week?" Jack smiled, his heart full. "Absolutely." That evening, as they drove home, the boys chatted animatedly about their experiences, their voices filled with excitement and joy. Jack listened, a profound sense of contentment washing over him. He realized that these moments, simple, genuine, and filled with love, were what truly mattered. As they pulled into the driveway, Jaden turned to Jack. "Thanks for today, Dad." Jack's heart swelled at the word. "Any time, son." Inside the house, the boys rushed to share their day with their caretaker, their voices overlapping in excitement. Jack stood back, watching the scene unfold, a smile playing on his lips. He knew the road ahead would have its challenges, but in that moment, he felt a deep sense of purpose and belonging. The journey of rediscovery, of building bonds and healing old wounds, had truly begun. The apartment was small, barely 600 square feet, but Jack Forrester couldn't remember the last time a space felt this full. Not with clutter, but with something he hadn't realized he missed. Noise that wasn't sterile. It was the clatter of wrenches on tile, the murmur of voices reciting multiplication tables, the occasional outburst of laughter that came from somewhere deep inside a child who still believed the world could be good. Jaden and Jordan had made the living room their workshop, their classroom, and their battlefield for arguments over which gear shifted smoother on a rebuilt derailleur. Jack sat on the floor beside them, cross-legged like he used to do at bike meets 2 decades ago, holding a bent spoke and watching the boys work. You ever use a truing stand? He asked casually, though his voice faltered. Jaden looked up. What's that? Jack smiled nostalgically. It's how you make a wheel straight again, when it gets wobbly. Jordan peered over. You mean like when Mom was in the hospital and we had to sleep at Miss Terry's and we got all out of sync? The air stilled. Jack's throat tightened. Yeah, kinda like that. They went back to their work, and Jack blinked hard, willing the tears to retreat. He was learning the rhythm of their lives, what each look meant, what silences should be honored, what deserved gentle questions. The boys weren't fragile, but they were stitched together by survival. Later that night, after the dishes were washed and the bike parts tucked away, Jack found an old box in the closet marked Mom's Things. He didn't open it without permission. Instead, he pointed. Can I? Jaden nodded. Only if you're ready. It's got memories. Inside, among old receipts and faded Polaroids, Jack found the photo again. Amber, glowing, holding a pregnancy test and laughing like she had nothing to fear. Tucked beside it was a postcard he didn't remember receiving. It was addressed to him. If you're reading this, I hope you found them. I didn't want to go, but if you're there, you were meant to be. Please build them something real, something you never had to fix. Amber's handwriting, her final instructions. He sat with the card resting on his knees like it weighed 100 pounds. The next morning, Jack woke early, quietly made pancakes from scratch. The boys still laughed at how uneven they turned out and helped them pack for school. As he waved goodbye, he whispered to himself, I'm staying, however long it takes. But not everyone was thrilled about the new arrangement. That afternoon, Jack received a knock. It was Gwen, the woman who had lived with Amber the last few years. She stood stiffly in the hallway, arms folded. I hear you've been playing Dad. Jack nodded calmly. I'm trying. Well, stop trying and start explaining. Why now? Why not 10 years ago when she needed help? The accusation burned. He didn't dodge it. I didn't know, he said honestly. I lost that wallet. I lost her. I didn't even know I had sons until that boy handed it to me 2 weeks ago. Gwen studied him. They're not pawns for redemption. I know, Jack whispered. They're my kids. You'll need to prove that. The next morning, a letter arrived, a notice of intent to challenge temporary custody. Gwen was filing for guardianship. Jack looked at the paper, his stomach sinking. He had just found them. He wasn't going to lose them again. Jack stepped outside the clinic, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the sidewalk. The echo of the doctor's words still throbbed in his mind. Amber had died 2 years ago. 2 years. And those boys, Jalen and Jordan, had been living with someone she wasn't even related to. Not a friend, not family, just circumstance. He stared down at the twin boys through the window. They were seated side by side, swinging their legs beneath the cracked bench, their shoulders brushing as they leaned over a comic book one of them had found. Identical grins. Identical curiosity, and unmistakably, undeniably his. Jack drew a breath that trembled in his chest. I'm not ready for this, he whispered, but it wasn't about readiness anymore. It was about responsibility and regret. The front desk nurse looked up as he re-entered. They're sweet boys, she said softly, quiet, polite. They asked if they could take the leftover fruit from the lunch tray. Jack nodded mutely, walking back toward them. He sat across from them on a small, chipped chair. Jordan looked up first. Hey, mister, did the doctor say you're okay? Jack chuckled faintly. Yeah, better than I deserve. Jalen tilted his head. You looked kinda sad earlier. Like, when you looked at the wallet? Jack nodded. It brought back memories. Jordan's eyes sparkled with mischief. Was that lady your girlfriend? Jack hesitated. Yeah, she was someone I cared about. A lot. The boys exchanged a glance. Then Jalen said quietly, "Our mom didn't talk much about our dad, just that he used to ride bikes with her and he could fix anything with his hands." Jack swallowed hard. "She said that?" Jordan nodded. "And she had this photo of you. Well, a guy who looked just like you, younger. It was in the wallet." Jack leaned in gently. "Do you have it still?" Jalen pulled the worn wallet from his backpack. He handed it over as if he were giving away a treasure. Jack opened it slowly, reverently. There it was. The photo of him and Amber at a bike rally in Santa Fe. Her arms around his neck, her smile wide, brilliant. And, in the corner, her handwriting. "To the man who never stayed but never stopped meaning everything." His throat burned. Jalen watched him closely. "Why did you leave her?" Jack's voice cracked. "I didn't mean to. We were young. I was reckless. I didn't know she was pregnant. I didn't know about you two." Silence stretched between them, thick and uncomfortable, until Jordan said quietly, "So, are you our dad?" Jack met their eyes, slowly, honestly. "I believe I am." The boys didn't react at first. Jalen looked down at his sneakers. Jordan fiddled with the hem of his shirt. Then Jalen whispered, "Would you have stayed if you knew?" Jack didn't hesitate. "I would have dropped everything. I would have fought to be with you." That answer seemed to settle something inside them. Jordan slid off the bench and reached for his backpack. "We're hungry," he said matter-of-factly. "You want to come eat tacos with us?" Jack stood, stunned by how easily the invitation came. "I'd love that." They walked together down the block to a small taqueria, the neon signs flickering against the dusky sky. Jack bought 3 plates of carnitas tacos, extra napkins, and a tamarind soda the boys insisted was the best thing on earth. As they ate, Jalen spoke through a mouthful of tortilla. "We've been fixing bikes for the other kids in the complex. They can't always afford to take them to real shops." Jack smiled. "You guys know your stuff. I could use mechanics like you at my shop." Jordan's eyes lit up. "You own a shop?" "More like a chain of garages," Jack said humbly. "Started with 1. Now there's 12, in Denver and a few other cities." Jalen leaned forward, curious. "So, you're like, rich?" Jack chuckled. "Rich in mistakes. Rich in things I wish I could do over." Jordan grinned. "That's a weird kind of rich." They finished their meal, and Jack walked them back to the modest apartment complex where they stayed. The stucco walls were cracked, and the hallway lights flickered. Before they went inside, Jalen turned. "Are you coming tomorrow?" Jack looked them in the eye. "Yes, and every day after that, if you'll let me." Jordan nudged his brother and whispered loudly, "He's gonna come back." Jalen grinned shyly. "See you tomorrow, Dad?" The word hit Jack like a thunderclap, soft, staggering, and echoing with possibility. "Yes," he said hoarsely. "See you tomorrow, son." And with that, the door closed, and Jack stood alone in the hallway, his heart full for the first time in a decade. Jack stood by the garage window, watching the twin boys carefully line up a row of rusty bike chains like puzzle pieces, each link scrubbed clean with painstaking care. For days now, they'd been helping at Forrester's main workshop, never asking for anything, never complaining, always working together with that unspoken twin synchronicity that made Jack's chest tighten every time he watched them. He was falling for them, not just as a man stirred by a sense of responsibility, but as someone who felt something ancient and soul-deep waking inside him. Jack was trying to keep things practical, arranging tutoring, setting up a spare room, making sure the boys had new shoes, but none of that explained the way his heart skipped when one of them called, "Jack, look what we fixed." "Dad," he whispered once, just to the air. It felt too big to say out loud. That morning, Jaden had dropped a question that haunted him still. "If you were our dad, would you stay?" He hadn't answered. Not really. Now, Watching them lean into each other, whispering over grease-stained gloves, Jack knew they were waiting for someone to stay, waiting for someone to say it. He was about to call them in for a break when a knock came at the office door. Jack opened it to find Danielle, his longtime lawyer and friend, standing in a crisp suit with a file in her hand and a troubled look on her face. "I didn't know you'd be here today," Jack said, stepping aside. "I'm always here when you do something this reckless," she said dryly, though her tone softened when she saw the boys through the window. "I've been contacted by the boys' current guardian, Ms. Cheryl Manners." Jack's stomach dropped. "The woman they're staying with?" Danielle nodded. "She's not their relative, just a tenant Amber trusted before she passed, but now she's claiming you're interfering with the children's stability. She's petitioned to stop your visitation." "She's barely involved in their lives," Jack said angrily. "Those boys are raising themselves." "Doesn't matter," Danielle said gently, placing the file on the desk. "Without legal standing, you can't just take them in, even temporarily." Jack ran a hand through his hair. "I can't lose them. Not now." Danielle hesitated. "There's one option." He looked up. "File for emergency custody. Based on what you've told me, the guardian is unfit, and you have both the means and emotional ties. But, Jack, it means going public. You'd have to prove paternity." Jack sat down heavily. "I don't even know if they're mine." Danielle offered a quiet smile. "Sometimes, being a father isn't about proof, it's about presence." Later that night, Jack tucked the boys into sleeping bags in his den. They'd asked to stay one more night, just one, and he couldn't refuse. Jaden blinked up at him sleepily. "Why do you help us, Jack?" Jack knelt beside him, his voice rough. "Because someone I cared about deeply once made a promise for me, and I didn't keep it, but I want to now." Jordan rolled over, his voice muffled. "You make us feel safe." Jack sat there long after they fell asleep, heart torn wide open. He was their safe place, their fixer of bikes, their maybe dad. And, tomorrow, he'd fight to become more. The next morning, Jack Forrester sat in the back of the family courtroom, hands clasped tightly in his lap. His knuckles were white, but not from fear. This time, it was from resolve. Across from him sat Cheryl Manners, her arms crossed, lips pursed in theatrical indignation. Jaden and Jordan weren't in the room. The court preferred children to be shielded from legal hostility when possible. Still, Jack could feel their absence like a hollow echo in his chest. Danielle leaned in beside him, whispering, "Remember, just be honest. The judge is looking for stability and intention, not perfection." Jack nodded slowly, heart pounding against his ribs. The judge, a composed woman with wise, steady eyes, entered and called the room to order. Cheryl's lawyer spoke first, accusing Jack of exploiting the boys for emotional compensation, of playing hero without understanding the consequences. Jack clenched his jaw. Every word felt like a slap, not just to him, but to the late Amber's memory. When it was his turn, Jack rose, his voice quieter than expected, but firm. "I didn't know about them," he began, eyes locked on the judge. "Amber never told me. If she had, I would have been there. I don't say that as a way to excuse myself, but to say this: the moment I saw their faces, everything changed." He paused, drawing in a shaky breath. "Jaden and Jordan aren't just kids to me. They're part of someone I lost. They're proof that even after we're gone, love leaves a trace. They fix bikes because Amber taught them to repair what others throw away. That's what I'm trying to do now, with them, with myself." The courtroom fell silent. Danielle handed over a letter which the judge read quietly. It was from the boys, 2 sets of clumsy handwriting scrawled across notebook paper. They'd written it themselves the night before, without Jack knowing. We like it better at Jack's because he listens to our stories. He makes pancakes like Mom used to. He never yells. We want to stay." The judge looked up. "Do you intend to pursue full guardianship, Mr. Forrester?" Jack didn't hesitate. "Yes, Your Honor. With everything I've got." The judge nodded thoughtfully. "Then I'll grant temporary joint custody pending a home inspection and follow-up evaluation." Jack exhaled, shoulders sinking in quiet relief. The boys weren't his legally yet, but they weren't being taken away either. Outside the courthouse, Jaden and Jordan waited with Danielle's assistant. When Jack emerged, they both ran to him, arms wide, questions tumbling from their mouths. "Did we lose?" Jack knelt between them, his voice thick. "Not today. We're going home. Together." Later that week, the backlash began. A blog post titled "Millionaire Mechanic Exploits Orphan Twins for PR Stunt" spread like wildfire through the local cycling community. The writer, a former business rival of Jack's, used an old photo of Jack receiving a charity award, splicing it beside a recent shot of him and the boys, fixing a bike. The implication was clear. Jack was using the twins to rebrand himself as the soulful, philanthropic entrepreneur. Jack stared at the screen in disbelief. "I didn't do this for clicks," he muttered. But the damage was done. Sponsorship deals pulled out. One of his garage locations received hate mail. The twins saw a flyer someone had taped to their school gate calling Jack a phony savior. At dinner that night, Jordan pushed his peas around, quiet. "Are we bad luck?" he asked suddenly. Jack froze. "No, buddy, absolutely not." "Then why does everyone hate you now?" Jaden added quietly. Jack reached across the table, gently taking both their hands. "Sometimes people don't understand the good things in front of them, but that doesn't mean they're not worth fighting for." The next day, Jack made a choice. He called every media outlet that would listen, not to defend himself, but to tell the truth. On camera, in an old garage filled with tools and memories, he spoke from the heart. "I don't need these boys to fix my image," he said. "They've already fixed something in me. This isn't a brand campaign. It's a second chance I didn't know I needed." That night, his inbox filled with messages. Parents thanking him, kids asking about the bike club, old friends saying they saw a different Jack now. As the boys brushed their teeth and got ready for bed, Jack taped up a hand-drawn poster Jordan had made. In crayon, it read, "Sometimes fixing a bike fixes a family." Jack stood there long after the boys were asleep, staring at the words. He wasn't done fighting. He was just getting started. A week later, the neighborhood was buzzing with anticipation. Flyers had gone up in every coffee shop, community center, and school bulletin board within 10 miles. The Forrester Youth Bike Rally was set to launch that Saturday. Jack didn't just want to fight the narrative, he wanted to rewrite it, with the boys by his side. The night before the rally, Jack stood in the garage-turned-workshop he and the boys had spent countless evenings in. Rows of repurposed bikes, some with rainbow tassels, others with knobby mountain tires, gleamed under the soft glow of overhead lights. Jordan had polished each one, declaring them shiny enough to race the moon. Jaden had added custom decals, flames, stars, and tiny drawings of gears. Jack watched them from the doorway, a wrench still in hand, heart full, and aching at the same time. "You guys ready for tomorrow?" he asked softly. Jaden glanced up, eyes shining. "Ready. Nervous, but mostly excited." Jack chuckled, walking over and pulling them both into a quick, warm hug. "That's exactly how I feel." Then, without warning, Jordan looked up at him and asked, "Do you think Mom would be proud?" Jack's throat tightened. He knelt slowly, locking eyes with the boy. "I think your mom would be unbelievably proud, not just because of the rally, but because of how strong you both are, You didn't wait for someone to rescue you. You worked, you dreamed, you fixed things." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "Amber wrote me a letter, you know," he continued, voice softer now. "It showed up when I least expected it. She said, if I ever found you, I should build you a bike and a future." Jaden swallowed hard. "Did you know we existed when she wrote that?" Jack shook his head slowly. "No, but I think, maybe deep down, I hoped she was wrong when she left. I just didn't know how to face it." Jordan reached out and touched the bracelet Jack always wore. Amber's bracelet. "You found us. You're building something now." Jack hugged them both again, fiercely, as if anchoring them to a world that finally felt real. The rally day dawned cool and bright, the sky brushed with gold and cotton candy clouds. Over 200 kids showed up with families in tow, most riding donated bikes Jack's team had restored. Food trucks lined the sidewalk. Volunteers handed out helmets and water bottles. The event was more than a race. It was a community celebration. Jack stepped up to the mic on the small wooden stage. Jaden and Jordan stood beside him in matching shirts. Forrester Fixers, Team Hope. He scanned the crowd before speaking. 10 years ago, I lost something I didn't even know was mine. 2 boys who were born with my name in their blood, but not yet in my life. When I found them, when they found me, they didn't ask for money or gifts. They asked if I could help fix a bike. A soft laugh rippled through the audience. "But what I've learned since," Jack continued, voice thick with emotion, "is that sometimes fixing a bike is just a way to fix a heart. This isn't about me. It's about building something lasting for every kid who thinks no one sees them." He nodded to the boys. "Jaden and Jordan are our honorary race captains today. They taught me more about resilience and love in 3 months than I've learned in a lifetime." Applause erupted, long and heartfelt. After the speech, the boys led the first lap, pedaling fiercely with huge grins stretched across their faces. Jack watched them from the sidelines, his heart pounding with every revolution of their wheels. Danielle approached, beaming. "You did it." Jack shook his head. "They did it. I just gave them the tools." Later that afternoon, after the last popsicle was eaten and the bikes were stowed, Jack sat at a folding table with the boys. Jordan slid a small envelope across to him. "What's this?" "A surprise." Jaden grinned. Jack opened it carefully. Inside was a folded piece of paper, lined, smudged, the handwriting wobbly and unsure. It was a letter Amber had helped the boys write years ago, tucked away and never mailed. "Dear Dad, we don't know you, but Mom says you were kind once. If you ever see this, please don't be mad. We hope you like bikes. We're building one. Maybe we can build one together. Love, Jaden and Jordan." Jack closed his eyes, breathing through the storm of emotions crashing through him. "I wish I had found this sooner," he whispered. "But you found us now," Jaden said simply, "and we're still building." Jack smiled tearfully, voice shaking. Yes, we are." He looked up at the sky, wondering if somewhere Amber was watching. Then he looked down at the boys, his boys, and realized he wasn't searching anymore. He was home. The following Monday, Jack returned to his corporate office downtown for the first time in weeks. The glass tower stood like a monument to the life he used to lead, one of speed, schedules, and success measured in digits. But as he rode the elevator up to the top floor, he didn't feel powerful. He felt disconnected. In the boardroom, the team was already mid-discussion when he entered. Jack, his COO, Miranda Chen, said with surprise, "We didn't expect you back so soon." Jack nodded slowly. "I won't be long." He walked to the head of the table, placing a small object in front of him, a rusted, bent bicycle pedal. "The last few weeks, I've spent my time fixing bikes, he began, glancing around the room of sharply dressed executives. And in doing so, I fixed something inside myself that I didn't even know was broken. An uncomfortable silence fell. Gentlemen, ladies, I've realized that all the business we chase means very little if the people we love aren't part of the ride. 2 boys I didn't know existed handed me a pedal and a photograph, and suddenly I had sons. I've decided to step away from daily operations. Miranda will be acting CEO, effective immediately. A murmur spread through the room. "You're retiring?" someone asked incredulously. "No," Jack said calmly. "I'm starting over, with Jaden and Jordan. My time belongs to them now." As he walked out, leaving stunned silence in his wake, Jack felt the strange lightness of letting go. That evening, the boys waited eagerly at the little workshop garage, their faces pressed to the window. "He's late," Jordan muttered anxiously. Jaden, ever steady, whispered, "Maybe he's saying goodbye to that old life." When the truck finally pulled up, Jack stepped out not in a suit, but in jeans and a hoodie, hair tousled, grease already on his palms. The boys ran to him, arms thrown around his waist. "I brought something," Jack grinned, lifting a long box from the truck bed. Inside were 3 shiny plaques engraved with their names. He held them up proudly. "Boys," he said with a playful bow, "I officially declare this place Dad's Garage, home of the Forrester fixes." The boys erupted with laughter and cheers. Jordan climbed onto the workbench to start hanging the first sign. Jaden grabbed a marker and began sketching a new logo on the whiteboard. A bike wheel wrapped in a heart, the spokes forming the letters JF. Later that night, they sat together in the backyard, bundled under a blanket, roasting marshmallows on a tiny fire pit Jack had cobbled together. "Jaden," Jack said quietly, "do you remember the first thing you said to me?" The boy thought for a second. "I said, 'That's our mom's wallet.'" Jack nodded. "And you handed it to me. You could have kept it. You didn't know me, but you trusted me." Jaden shrugged. "Mom used to say real dads don't just show up. They step up. You did." Emotion clutched Jack's chest. "I wish I could have been there from the beginning." "But you're here now," Jordan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Are you going to stay forever?" Jack took their hands in his. "As long as there's a breath in me, I'll be your dad. Not just in name, not just in court, in life." They sat in silence as the fire crackled, stars glimmering above them, forming new constellations none of them had ever dared wish on before. 3 days later, the guardianship hearing took place. Jack stood before the judge in a dark gray blazer, hands folded calmly, but his heart a thunderstorm. Jordan clutched his left hand. Jaden held his right. Behind them sat their social worker, a woman named Ms. Delaney, who had seen too many children bounce from house to house. The judge, a middle-aged woman with soft eyes, peered over her glasses. "You've only known these boys a short time, Mr. Forrester. Why should this court believe you're the right person to raise them?" Jack inhaled slowly. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out the letter Amber had written, the one she had never mailed. "If you'll allow me, Your Honor, I'd like to read this." The judge nodded. Jack unfolded the page. His voice trembled at first, but steadied as he read. "If you ever find them, build them a bike and a future. Don't be perfect, just be present. Love them with the same reckless joy we once knew." He looked up, eyes glassy. "I didn't know how to be a father, but they taught me, and I am ready to give them every moment I have left." The courtroom was quiet, except for the boy's breathing and Jack's pounding heart. The judge smiled gently. "I believe that love, honest, willing love, is more powerful than any timeline. This court grants full guardianship of Jaden and Jordan Whitmore to Mr. Jack Forrester." The gavel fell, and with it, a weight Jack hadn't even known he carried lifted. He turned to the boys. "We did it," he whispered. "No," Jordan said with a smile. "We did it." The morning after the courtroom decision, the house smelled like cinnamon and motor oil, a strange but perfect blend of their new life together. Jack stood in the kitchen flipping pancakes while Jordan and Jaden argued over which helmet color was luckier. "Blue always wins races," Jordan insisted, tapping his spoon against his juice glass. Jaden countered with a grin. "Yeah? Then why did the red helmet beat you last time?" Jack chuckled, watching them with quiet admiration. The kitchen had once been sterile, more of a showroom than a home. Now it bore signs of real life: crumbs, laughter, and a child's drawing of a bike on the fridge with "Dad" written in block letters above it. "Hey guys," Jack said, placing a fresh plate on the table. "How do you feel about doing something special today?" "Special like what?" Jaden asked, eyes lighting up. Jack leaned in. "Like launching our own community project. Dad's garage is going public." Jordan's fork dropped with a clang. "You mean, we're really doing it?" "We're opening the first free repair clinic next week," Jack said. "But today, we're going to build bikes for 5 kids whose parents can't afford repairs. You'll be in charge of design." The boys whooped and high-fived, then dashed off to grab their sketch pads. Jack watched them go, a lump rising in his throat. He still couldn't believe how completely and how quickly his life had changed. The garage was a flurry of activity by noon. Jack, now more mentor than CEO, guided the boys as they worked side by side, oiling chains and adjusting brakes. He paused to admire Jordan's handiwork. The kid had a natural instinct for engineering. Jaden, meanwhile, had an eye for design. He added a blue lightning decal to a tiny frame, then looked up at Jack. "Do you think Mom would like this one?" Jack swallowed hard. "I think she'd love it." Jaden nodded thoughtfully. "She liked blue, right?" Jack reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn photo. It showed Amber holding a newborn, smiling despite the bandage around her head. She said blue reminded her of calm skies, of peace. The boys huddled around the photo. It was the first time they'd seen their mom as more than a memory in someone else's voice. "Can we keep this?" Jordan asked. Jack hesitated. Then he knelt down and placed the photo in Jaden's hands. "It belongs to you now." That evening, as the sun dipped low over Denver, the family gathered for a quiet moment on the workshop's roof. Jack had strung fairy lights between the rafters, casting a warm golden hue over their makeshift rooftop lounge: beanbags, blankets, and a lemonade in old mason jars. "Dad?" Jordan asked hesitantly. "Why did Mom never tell you about us?" Jack exhaled deeply. "She didn't get the chance, and I think maybe she was scared. Maybe she thought I wouldn't be ready." Jaden leaned his head against Jack's shoulder. "But you were." "I didn't feel ready at first," Jack admitted. "But then I met you both, and everything changed." There was a long pause as the stars blinked alive above them. Jordan broke the silence. "When I grow up, I want to fix bikes and help kids too." Jack smiled and mussed his hair. "You already are." Then Jaden added shyly, "I think I want to write stories about moms who leave notes in old wallets." Jack laughed softly, tears in his eyes. "That's a story the world needs." Later that night, Jack tucked the boys into bed. They now shared a room painted half blue, half red, just like their helmets. On the wall above their beds, he had mounted a sign that read, "The Forrester Family Garage, where every fix builds something greater." As he pulled the covers over them, Jaden tugged at his sleeve. "Will you be here tomorrow?" Jack bent down and kissed his forehead. "I'll be here every tomorrow." When he turned to leave, Jordan called after him. "Dad?" "Yeah, buddy?" I like our story better than any race we ever watched, Jack's heart clenched with a fierce, overwhelming love. I do too, son. I really do. He turned off the light, stepped into the hallway, and let the darkness embrace him, not with emptiness, but with peace. The next chapter, he knew, would begin at sunrise. The grand opening of Dad's Garage began not with fanfare, but with the smell of pancakes and the sound of laughter. Outside the newly renovated bike clinic, once an old warehouse Jack had almost sold years ago, neighbors gathered beneath a banner hand-painted by Jaden and Jordan. Sometimes, fixing a bike fixes a family. Jack stood beside his sons, dressed not in a tailored suit, but in a denim apron smudged with grease. He smiled humbly as the boys cut the ribbon with oversized novelty scissors, hands trembling with excitement. A local news crew captured the moment. A reporter crouched down to ask Jordan, "What made you want to open a bike shop for free?" Jordan looked at Jack, then into the camera. "Because once, we didn't know who we belonged to, but now we do, and we want to help other kids feel that too." Jack swallowed the lump in his throat. Behind him, the modest building buzzed with life. Volunteers helped kids choose bikes. Parents signed up for repair lessons. And on every wall, old parts were repurposed into art. Chains shaped into hearts, spokes twisted into angel wings. Jaden tapped Jack's arm. "There's someone here to see you." Jack turned to find Mrs. Ruiz, the social worker who had once fought for him in court, standing just inside the entrance, holding a thick manila envelope. "I thought you might want this," she said gently. "Amber's case file, letters, notes, medical records, and one sealed envelope addressed to you." Jack took it with reverent hands. "Thank you." He sat on a bench out back while the boys helped kids inflate tires. The sun filtered through the clouds like quiet forgiveness. He opened the envelope. "Jack, if you're reading this, it means the boys found you, or you found them. Either way, I'm glad. I was afraid you'd walk away again, but more afraid you'd never know the best parts of you live in them. Jaden's fire, Jordan's heart, the way they argue like you used to laugh, full and unafraid. Please don't just fix bikes. Build their future. Love them in the loud, imperfect way we dreamed of loving each other. Let them know they were always wanted. Always. And if there's still room in your heart, smile once in a while. You have a beautiful smile. I remember. Love, always. Amber." Jack folded the letter slowly, pressing it against his chest. Then he rose, silently, steadily, and walked back inside, heart pounding with new resolve. That evening, after the crowd dispersed and the lights dimmed, Jack sat with the boys under the same fairy lights they'd strung months ago. They were eating ice cream from paper bowls. Jaden had chocolate on his nose. Jordan had 3 stickers on his shirt that read Chief Mechanic, Boss, and I Need a Nap. Jaden looked up suddenly. "Dad, what was Mom like?" Jack leaned back and stared at the ceiling for a long beat. "She was brave," he said finally, "and kind, and smarter than I ever gave her credit for. She never wanted to be the center of attention, but somehow she always lit up a room." Jordan asked, "Do you think she'd like what we're doing?" "I think," Jack said, his voice thick with emotion, "she'd be proud beyond words." Jaden pointed to the corner of the shop, where a new display had been added that day, Amber's favorite flower, a blue dahlia, made of welded bike gears and spokes. Underneath, a simple plaque read, "In memory of the road that led us home." As the boys drifted off to sleep on the old couch, their legs tangled in a blanket, Jack watched them in silence. He didn't need the courtroom anymore. He didn't need headlines or recognition. He had something better. He had legacy. Not the kind made of money, but of hands held tightly through hard days. of promises kept, of bikes built with care and laughter echoing in the walls. He got up, turned off the lights, and whispered into the quiet, "We're home, Amber. We're finally home." And in the dark, a soft breeze passed through the open door, gentle as forgiveness.